On January 25, 1990, Avianca Flight 052 took off from Bogotá, Colombia, heading to New York with 158 people on board, passengers dreaming of new adventures and a crew ready for a routine trip. The Boeing 707 climbed into the sky smoothly, engines roaring as families waved goodbye from the ground. No one knew this journey was doomed from the start. A dangerous mix of tight fuel planning and bad weather was waiting ahead. The plane soared over mountains and oceans, but trouble was brewing far away in New York's stormy skies. What began as a normal flight would soon turn into a heart-stopping disaster. Before we dive into video, please subscribe our channel. As Avianca Flight 052 left Bogotá, the crew loaded it with 80,000 pounds of fuel, enough, they thought, for the trip to New York with a little extra for safety. But this decision was a ticking time bomb strapped to the plane's wings. They didn't account for how bad things could get. Hours into the flight, a massive storm slammed into the U.S. East Coast, clogging the skies around John F. Kennedy Airport. Planes were stacking up, waiting to land, and Avianca 052 was caught in the mess. The fuel, already tight, started burning faster than anyone wanted to admit. Every minute in the air was a gamble. Could they make it before the tanks ran dry? The pilots stayed calm at first, trusting their calculations. But doubt crept in as the storm refused to let up. Air traffic controllers, juggling dozens of flights, didn't know how close this plane was to disaster. The fuel gauges dipped lower, turning a routine flight into a desperate race against time. That 80,000 pounds, which seemed fine on the ground, was no match for nature's fury and the chaos of an overcrowded sky. The crew could feel the pressure building, but they pressed on, hoping for a break in the clouds. Little did they know, this storm was about to push them past the point of no return, setting the stage for a tragedy no one saw coming. Avianca Flight 052 was trapped in a nightmare above New York's stormy skies. As the plane neared JFK Airport, air traffic control ordered it into holding patterns, circling loops to wait out the chaos below. One pattern became 2, then 3, stretching over an agonizing hour. Fuel was burning fast, and the gauges were dropping into the red. The pilots watched helplessly as the storm raged on, grounding planes and clogging runways. Each circle felt like a noose tightening around them, the engines guzzling what little fuel remained. The crew grew tense, knowing they couldn't stay up much longer, but they had no choice. Controllers kept them spinning in the sky. Passengers, unaware, sat quietly, while outside, lightning flashed and winds howled. The situation was spiraling out of control, a perfect trap of bad weather and bad timing. Every minute pushed the plane closer to disaster, the fuel needle inching toward empty. It was a silent countdown, with the pilots stuck between following orders and screaming for help. The holding patterns, meant to keep them safe, became a deadly dance with fate. By the time they got clearance to land, the damage was done, too much time wasted, too little fuel left. What started as a delay turned into a death sentence, all while they hovered above a storm that refused to let them go. The situation on Avianca Flight 052 turned deadly quiet, not because it was calm, but because of a fatal miscommunication. As fuel ran dangerously low, the pilots told air traffic control they were running out and needed priority to land. But they never shouted emergency, the magic word that could have cleared the runway fast. Instead, their message was soft, almost casual, lost in the busy chatter of controllers handling dozens of planes. The crew hinted at trouble, saying they couldn't make it to another airport, but didn't push hard enough. Why? Maybe language barriers, maybe fear of overreacting Spanish-speaking pilots talking to English-speaking controllers left room for confusion. On the other side, the controllers didn't catch the panic. They thought Avianca could wait like everyone else, not realizing the plane was minutes from falling out of the sky. It was a quiet disaster unfolding in loud skies. No alarms, no red flags, just a missed signal. The pilots kept circling, hoping for a miracle, while controllers stayed blind to the ticking clock. That silence cost everything. If they'd screamed emergency, history might have changed, runways would have opened, lives could have been saved. Instead, a simple failure to connect turned a desperate plea into a whisper, sealing the fate of 73 passengers and crew in one of aviation's most heartbreaking lessons. The moment of truth came for Avianca Flight 052 as it finally got clearance to land at JFK. The pilots lined up for the runway, hearts pounding, with fog thick and wind shear, a sudden, violent shift in air battering the plane. Fuel was almost gone, the engines gasping on fumes. They descended through the murk, runway lights barely visible, fighting to keep control. But the storm had other plans. The wind shoved them off course and the plane wobbled. Too low, too unstable. The crew pushed the throttles, trying to climb for a second try. But the engines coughed, starved of fuel. They couldn't respond. It was their one shot, and it slipped away. The missed approach wasn't just bad luck. It was the breaking point after hours of delays and shrinking reserves. They'd been stretched too thin, 3 holding patterns, a storm, and now this. The plane couldn't go around again. There was nothing left to give. Passengers gripped their seats, some praying, others clueless, as the pilots wrestled with a dying machine. That failed landing wasn't the end. It was the last gasp before the plunge. With no power to climb or circle, the Boeing 707 was a wounded bird, teetering on collapse, seconds from crashing into the dark Long Island night ahead. The end came fast for Avianca Flight 052. After the missed landing, the fuel-starved engines gave up one by one. First a sputter, then silence, 4 engines dead. The plane turned into a 164-ton glider. The cockpit filled with alarms, lights flashing red as the pilots fought useless controls. At 9:34 p.m., just 20 miles from JFK, the Boeing 707 dropped from the sky. It smashed into a wooded hillside in Cove Neck, Long Island, a quiet place unprepared for chaos. The impact was brutal. Metal tore apart, seats ripped free, and lives ended in an instant. The plane slid down the slope, breaking into pieces, fuel tanks empty but sparking small fires. 73 people died, passengers and crew torn from their dreams in a flash. The dark, foggy night swallowed the wreckage, leaving an eerie stillness pierced by survivors' cries. Trees snapped like twigs, and the ground shook as the fuselage crumpled. It wasn't a gentle fall. It was a violent plunge, a final unstoppable crash after hours of struggle. The pilots had no chance to warn anyone, no fuel, no power, no hope. What started as a routine flight ended in a deafening roar, then silence as the wreckage settled into the cold January earth, a grim mark of a battle lost to the skies. When Avianca Flight 052 crashed into Cove Neck, the sleepy Long Island village was jolted awake by chaos. At 9:34 p.m., the Boeing 707 slammed into a hillside, scattering wreckage across backyards and woods. Houses shook, windows rattled, and residents ran outside to a surreal sight: twisted metal, flickering flames, and screams cutting through the fog. The plane had torn apart, pieces strewn like a broken toy, some smashing into trees, others landing steps from homes. Survivors, dazed and bloodied, stumbled from the rubble, calling for help. First responders, local firefighters, police, and medics raced in, battling thick fog and darkness to reach the site. They waded through mud and debris, pulling people from the wreckage, some still strapped in seats. The air smelled of jet fuel and smoke, a haunting mix with the cries of the injured. 85 passengers and crew lived, but 73 didn't. Bodies lay scattered, a grim toll. Neighbors joined the rescue, turning a quiet night into a frantic fight for life. Ambulances lined the narrow roads, sirens wailing as helicopters buzzed overhead. It was chaos meets courage, a community thrust into a disaster movie, working against time. The crash scarred Cove Neck, leaving a story of horror and heroism etched into its history. A night no one there would ever forget. Amid the wreckage of Avianca Flight 052, stories of survival and sacrifice emerged from the rubble. An 8-year-old girl, soaked in blood and fuel, crawled out alive but heartbroken. Her parents and brother didn't make it, leaving her an orphan in an instant. A flight attendant, pinned in the debris, stayed conscious long enough to guide rescuers to trapped passengers, saving lives before succumbing to her injuries. 85 people survived, some thrown clear, Others pulled from twisted seats by first responders who worked tirelessly in the dark. A father shielded his son with his body, dying so the boy could live. Ordinary people became heroes. Local firefighters cut through metal with bare hands, while a nurse on scene bandaged wounds with torn clothes. Survivors shivered in the January cold, wrapped in blankets from nearby homes, their gasps of relief mixing with sobs for the lost. 73 didn't make it, including children dreaming of New York and crew members fighting to the end. Each rescue was a race against fading pulses, every cry a call answered by strangers turned saviors. These tales of a little girl's loss, a father's love, and rescuers' grit paint a raw picture of humanity shining through tragedy, a fragile hope rising from the ashes of a flight that fell from the sky. After Avianca Flight 052 crashed, the question burned hot. Who was to blame? Fingers pointed everywhere in a messy, emotional showdown. The pilots took heat. Why didn't they yell "emergency" loud enough or divert sooner? Their quiet plea got lost, some said, because of shaky English or fear of overstepping. Air traffic controllers faced fire too busy with a storm. They didn't catch the plane's dire straits, treating it like just another delay. The FAA got slammed for letting JFK's skies get so jammed, with no clear rules to flag fuel-starved flights. Investigators dug in, and the truth was ugly. Human error piled up like a stack of dominoes. Language gaps between the Colombian crew and American controllers muddied warnings. Fatigue from long delays dulled everyone's edge. The airline skimped on fuel to save cash, betting on a smooth trip that never came. No single villain emerged, just a system where everyone missed a beat. The National Transportation Safety Board called it a lack of crew assertiveness meets controller overload, a recipe for disaster. Families mourned 73 lost lives, demanding answers, while lawyers battled over fault. It was a web of slip-up small mistakes that snowballed into a fireball on a Long Island hill. The blame game didn't bring anyone back, but it lit a fuse for change, forcing the world to face aviation's weak spots. The crash of Avianca Flight 052 left a lasting mark on aviation. It sparked new rules. Pilots now get better training to shout emergency clearly, and controllers learn to spot trouble faster. Fuel planning tightened up, ensuring planes carry extra for surprises like storms. The tragedy, killing 73, taught the world that small mistakes can spiral into catastrophe. It's a haunting lesson. Communication and preparation save lives. Today, flights are safer because of that dark night in 1990. What do you think, viewers? Could this happen again? Or have we learned enough? Share your thoughts. Did the fixes go far enough? My advice, if you're ever in a plane delay, trust the crew, but know they're human too. Speak up if something feels off. Your voice might matter. Let's keep pushing for safety so no family waits in vain for a flight that never lands.